Just welcoming Roshena Campbell, Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne. Hello, how are you, Roshena?
Vijay, it's so nice to have you here. An honour to
very
have
much.
you at Town
Thank you
Hall
very
here
much.
in Melbourne. Indians now
Yes.
are the largest foreign-born population in Australia.
Yes.
They have overtaken England.
And I'm very surprised that Indian origin woman is in the politics in Australia. The first time I ever heard about this.
Melbourne is a multicultural city and
Yeah.
we're very proud to celebrate that.
Definitely. What career options for the Indians you suggest to students so they can go through? Like you have told, medicine and law is a good option. What apart from this is good? Earlier you were solicitor and then barrister. Then in 1920 you get into the Melbourne City Councillor, and in now 2024 until date she is the Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne. Wow, that's awesome. What took you into the politics?
That India is now the largest source of foreign-born population. We've overtaken England.
Yeah.
But if you looked at any of our levels of government, you would not see that.
Can you guide the people through me? Like, how can they go into the politics? If I want to enter in the politics and go on to the federal level, so how that roadmap looks like? Where your parents are from India?
They're both from Calcutta. So we're Bengali, and they met in Australia.
One of my friends just came to India last 3 years back, I think, with me only.
Yes.
He was in the Monash University,
Yes.
and he won the election. And now he's the president of Monash University. So this is the chamber where they take the most of decisions. It's a place where Lord Mayor sit, and this is the chamber looks like. Right now we are in the official building of Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne. I'm very scared of doing this podcast. First time ever in my life I'm doing this podcast, this type of podcast. The guest is very big. Out of my, I don't know what to say, what to not to say. Just welcoming Roshena Campbell, Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne. Hello, how are you, Roshena?
Vijay, it's so nice to have you here. An honour to have you at Town Hall here in Melbourne.
Can we discuss something about your life and your careers and and advice for the students who are just starting their career in Australia? I want to know about your job role as well.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I can't wait to share my story.
Thank you very much. Have a seat, and we'll discuss about this something interesting today. Hi, Roshena. How are you?
I'm great, and it is so good to be here with you, and wonderful to have you here at Melbourne Town Hall.
Thank you very much. You know, first time I'm visiting an official building in the Melbourne.
Yes.
I'm very, very nervous because first time having this type of podcast.
Oh, don't be nervous at all. We are overjoyed to be able to have you here today.
Sure. I want to look to your journey that your parents migrated in 1970s in Australia. How was those days when you born in 1985, I think?
I was, yes.
How was those days and how it impacted your life till date?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Australia was a very different country in the 70s and 80s. It is certainly a much more multicultural country now. You know, it's fascinating that the census figures that came out just recently show that Indians now are the largest foreign-born population in Australia.
Yes.
They have overtaken England. That certainly was not the case when my parents came here from India. They came to a very different Australia, still a multicultural country, but not like the country we know now. And Melbourne in particular is a very multicultural city. You know, if you walk down the streets of Melbourne outside today, every second person you meet, they have either been born overseas themselves or their parents were born overseas. So this is now very much a city of migration that is part of the DNA of this city's story, but that has been a real journey. You know, 40 years ago in Australia, I wouldn't say that was the experience that migrants had. It wasn't as common to be surrounded by a population where half of the people were either born overseas or the child of someone born overseas.
Sure. See, the whole motive is to do this podcast is only that I want to know how is the life of a Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne is. First time hearing about this profession. After all, and I'm very surprised that Indian origin woman is in the politics in Australia. The first time I ever heard about this. So really want to know about your journey, how you started as a career in law. First you were, I think, barrister, right?
And I still work as a barrister, a commercial and public law barrister.
Okay.
And now, yes, I also have a political role as the Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne.
On my research, I thought that your parents were from business, small business they have started.
Yeah.
What take you two from business to the law?
Well, I mean, I could sort of say jokingly that I think many children of migrants, particularly children of Indian migrants are encouraged, at least then, to go into what were thought of as the stable careers like medicine or law. So I think that even subconsciously, perhaps, they're careers that I always thought were the preferable careers. But luckily for me, the skills that you need to be a lawyer are skills that I think are incredibly important. So, you know, being a lawyer or a barrister, you are the trusted person to represent someone when things are toughest in their life. Whether you are representing an individual who might not have a lot of money, or you're representing a director of one of Australia's largest companies or a multinational, no matter who that person is, if they are involved in the court process, that is a bad time in their life. That is a tough time in their life. So to be the person who's trusted to listen to their story and then fight for them, I think that's a really great privilege to have that as a job. And I love doing it. It doesn't matter who my client is. It's always a privilege to be that trusted voice for them. But I think in terms of study options, I think when you look at the various degrees you can do in Australia if you decide to go to university, I think subconsciously, as the daughter of Indian migrants, something like medicine or law was probably always going to be at the forefront.
All right, no worries. The thing is, what career options for the Indians you suggest to students so they can go through? Like you have told, medicine and law is a good option. What apart from this is good?
So, I mean, I think that might have been the case when I was studying. You know, I was born in 1985. I'm not sure that's still the case now. I think the world has changed so much.
Technology AI,
yes,
computing,
absolutely.
everything is there.
So when I talked about the fact that when I was growing up, law was seen as a stable profession, I no longer think that is necessarily the case. There is no doubt that AI will perform many of the functions that particularly have been performed by people in law firms. And many of those more, you know, mining through huge amounts of evidence, managing huge amounts of documents, a lot of that work I expect AI will eat into. Does that mean that we won't need lawyers? No, I don't think that's the case. I think there will always be a need for human judgment, advocacy, and just human experience in the law. I don't think a computer can ever fight a court case for you, and nor can a computer be the judge of the right outcome in a legal matter. But there's no doubt that what were sort of previously seen as stable jobs, you know, if you worked hard, you got a good mark at law school, you got a job at a top law firm, it used to be the case that there was a certain stability in that. You were set for life, you'd set yourself up. I no longer think that is the case. I don't think there are safe professions, but I do think there are paths to be stable in every profession.
Definitely.
But I think that stability actually requires you to be very nimble and resilient and capable of change. So if you're someone who thinks you're going to get through any university degree and sit behind a desk for the next 40 years and keep moving up and earning more and more money, and eventually you're going to get to the top of your profession and then you're going to retire, I don't think that path exists anymore.
Definitely.
I think you might start behind that desk, but you're always going to have to be learning new skills, learning to deal with disruption. And there might be people who work in the same field in the same firm even their whole lives, but they're only going to thrive and succeed if they've got that ability to be nimble, to change. And I do think a group of people who generally have that ability are migrants. You know, if you've come to a new country, you've started a new life, you've had to learn perhaps a new way of life, you've got a lot of resilience, you've got the capacity to change and adapt. And so I do think that is a very transferable skill to setting yourself up for professional success in this very new world we're all in now.
Yes, definitely. So you must be changing yourself. You must be learning new skills every day. You must be dealing with different opportunities every day. Like me, right now I'm doing podcasting from last 6 months, learning AI too, learning coding too, learning how to build websites, how to build apps, how to do editing, how to making thumbnails. So you have to keep changing, keep learning, then you have to succeed, and then you only get stable in your future.
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
So coming back to your journey, you're a barrister in course Westgarth, I think, in Victoria.
Yes, I mean, in the law there are solicitors in law firms. So I was a solicitor at Cause Chambers Westgarth, which is a very large commercial law firm in Australia. And then after that, I decided to be a barrister. So barristers are the people with the gowns in court who are standing up and actually fighting for people.
Right.
And I loved being at a firm. It's great. You meet lots of different clients and have lots of different experience. But what I really loved and still love is being the person telling someone's story in court, working out the strategy in court and getting those outcomes in court. And you only get to do that as a barrister. So
what sort of cases you deal with? Is immigrants?
I don't do any migration law really. I do lots of commercial cases, so disputes, sometimes small disputes, but also I've acted in court cases between some of Australia's largest companies, multinationals. I do a lot of work in shareholder disputes and director disputes, so lots of that commercial corporate work. And then I also do what's called public law, which is often advising sometimes government, sometimes ministers about their decision making and whether they have made the right decision or not. Now, some people who do that sort of work do go on to specialise in migration, and some of them do an amazing job. I've seen some incredible migration law barristers. It's not a path I've gone down, but I know that you know, we talked about sort of a barrister being with someone in what can be the most vulnerable point in their lives. I know many people who are finding themselves with the migration law issue. That is an incredibly vulnerable experience, and having good representation that is going to achieve the best outcome for you is obviously incredibly important for those people.
So earlier you were solicitor and then barrister. Then in 1920 you get into the Melbourne City Councillor, and in now 2024 until date, she is the Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne. Wow, that's awesome. What took you into the politics? Law and politics is different, I think.
Different, but I think in some ways similar. So what I was talking about being the person who listens to someone and fights for them, I think that's something you do in law, but it's also something you do in politics. You're listening to voters, to communities who want things, and it might be that they are fighting for a certain local outcome. Maybe they want a new park, maybe they want a road change, maybe they want more investment in community infrastructure. Maybe, you know, in Melbourne, which is where I'm the Deputy Lord Mayor, we also represent the thousands and thousands of businesses that make up Melbourne. So maybe they want different economic settings that make sure they're spending less time dealing with bureaucracy and filling in forms and more time growing their business. So taking that as an example, when I started at the City of Melbourne in 2020, Melbourne was in the midst of a series of lockdowns for COVID, which hit business really hard. Melbourne was the most locked down city in the world. And so plenty of businesses were struggling, and some of them shut their doors. And we wanted to make sure that Melbourne had a strong economic growth story after COVID. And one of the ways we could do that is to say that we don't want people spending time filling in, you know, all the paperwork you fill in to start a business. I need this planning permit, then I need this licence, then, you know, I want to put some tables outside on the footpath, so I've got to fill in another form for that. And then you're bouncing around all of these government departments. By the time you've done all of that, months and months have gone. You haven't even managed to earn a dollar. So we set up two parts of the City of Melbourne. One is called the Business Concierge, and that's what they are. They're a concierge. So they are your one point of call at Town Hall. So you can call our Business Concierge service and say, I've got an idea, I want to set up this type of restaurant, and they will hold your hand every step of the way to get all that paperwork done. We also set up something called Invest Melbourne to attract investment to Melbourne. And since we did those things, we have halved the time it takes to open a business in Melbourne. It used to take around 8 months from having this idea of I'm going to open let's say a Deshi, you know, restaurant, and we're going to have amazing Indian street food, to actually opening your doors and getting some money. It used to take 8 months, and that's a really long time for people. You know, you might be borrowing money to open this business, but you're not turning a profit. By creating Business Concierge and Invest Melbourne, we've halved that to 4 months, and I hope we can get it down, you know, even lower, so that between having that idea and opening your doors and taking your first takings, I want it to be as quick as possible for people. I don't think people should be slowed down by government bureaucracy. They should be able to get on with it. So that's an example of something that, you know, something a community asked for, in that case the business community, and as a councillor in politics, it was something I was able to help deliver. Okay.
By the time, what I can understand is the Deputy Lord Mayor job is to do investments and business things and cases to deal with and something like that. Is there something else that you could work with?
So, I mean, I think the first thing to say, and this is not the case in every country, but in Australia we have 3 levels of government. So we have the federal parliament, that's our Prime Minister, and they're based in Canberra. Then you've got every state or territory, they have their state parliament. In Victoria, that's led by a Premier, and they're in Victoria, based up on Spring Street. And then you have local government, that's where you have your mayors and your councillors, and that's what we're doing here in Melbourne Town Hall. So this is the local government. Every level of government has different responsibilities. So the federal government with the Prime Minister, some of the things that are typically federal government responsibilities are things like deciding the immigration settings, deciding foreign affairs, deciding defence. They're things that the federal government does on behalf of the whole country. They decide those policies.
So first is federal.
First is federal. That's the level for the whole country. Yes.
Okay, whole country.
So
okay.
defence, are we going to go to war? Foreign affairs, are we going to have a relationship with this country? What are we going to do in terms of our trade deals?
Relations, yeah.
That's all done at the federal level.
External affairs, yeah.
Then we have the state government,
Okay.
and every state has a state government, and the leader of the state government is the Premier.
Premier, right.
And the state government has different responsibilities, but traditionally they have things like education and hospitals and healthcare.
Okay.
So, if you live in a community that has seen huge growth and you don't have enough schools for the population, or you live in a community with a hospital where you're waiting a really long time to be seen, they're problems you should be taking up with the state government.
Okay.
Similarly, lots of local infrastructure like access to trains, buses and some of those major roads, they're all state government things. And I think particularly for migrant populations, many of whom don't settle in the centre of a city, some of them do. In fact, we have quite a large Indian population here in the central city in Docklands. Mm-hmm. But many migrants, particularly migrants and families, will settle in further out suburban areas. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems we see in Victoria is you see these large pockets of migrant families that don't have access to enough schools, enough roads, enough public transport, and that is not a great quality of life. I don't think that's the Australian dream a lot of migrants expect when they come here. So if that is an experience you are having, the state government, that is the level of government responsible.
Sure.
And then the local government, so across the country there are local councils, and they have different responsibilities. So their responsibilities really are their local area. So I'm the Deputy Lord Mayor in Melbourne, which is a capital city, and the area takes in our central business district, Melbourne, as well as the surrounding inner city areas. And a council has responsibility for different things. So they have responsibility for things like building new parks and gardens, building playgrounds. They also have responsibility when they're in a capital city like Melbourne for putting on some of the things that make us a destination for visitors. So tourism is a very big part of what I do. It's one of the portfolio responsibilities I have. And tourism is a huge part of Melbourne's economy, from hospitality to our great cultural institutions to, of course, sport. We're the sporting capital of Australia. So as part of my role as the Deputy Lord Mayor, I spend a lot of time on tourism and events. The council puts on some events itself. We do New Year's Eve fireworks, for example. We do Christmas. But we also fund other events or help support them. Everything from the Australian Open, which is, of course, our great tennis championship in this region. A lot of the sporting events we work with, sometimes to do things like provide free components so that there'll be screens around the city where you can watch something for free. We also work with lots of the big cultural events. Melbourne is not just the sporting capital. We're lucky enough to be the cultural capital.
We celebrate Holi here.
We do celebrate Holi here.
I have seen you there.
Yes, the Lord Mayor and I had a great time at Holi this year at Docklands. And we also celebrate Diwali 2 places in the city of Melbourne. So we do lots of those festivals, cultural festivals as well. So they're all things that the City of Melbourne
Only
does.
about Indian festivals or every festival?
We celebrate many, many different cultural festivals. So some of the larger ones, in addition to those for our Indian community, are things like Lunar New Year for our Chinese community. That's a very large festival. It's actually rare to find a single week of the year where you won't find at least one multicultural festival on in Melbourne. In fact, many weeks there'll be many. Tomorrow I'm doing a multicultural festival for the Vietnamese community. Tomorrow in Federation Square in our city. So Melbourne is a multicultural city, and we're very proud to celebrate that.
Definitely.
But one of the election commitments the Lord Mayor and I had, which we are delivering on now, is the idea of establishing a Little India precinct in Melbourne.
What is that?
Yeah, so Melbourne...
You just shared the story, I think, on the Instagram about Little India.
Yeah.
Earlier I thought it was a business name, but no, then you told me about it's like something like
It's a
street
precinct.
or something,
Yeah, so many cities around the world have Chinatown. They have a Chinatown precinct where there's lots of Chinese businesses. There'll be some, Chinese sort of architecture, maybe lanterns. Melbourne has a Chinatown. It's in fact the oldest continuous Chinatown in the Western world. We're proud of that. We've got a strong Chinese population. We have a Greek precinct where there's lots of, Greek restaurants. We have a huge Greek festival. We have an Italian precinct in Lygon Street, which has Italian restaurants. We even have Koreatown now. So it is kind of shocking that when Indians have become the largest foreign-born population in Australia, that here in Melbourne, which has the largest Indian diaspora in Australia, we are the Indian capital of Australia, that we can have Chinatown, we can have a Little Italy, we can have a Greek precinct, we can have Koreatown, and yet we don't have a place that we celebrate our Indian community. And so we're still working on what that looks like, but some of the things it might look like is it's the place where you'd go to for Holi, for Diwali, you'd have those big celebrations there. I would hope that you'd have some Indian street food vendors, Indian restaurants, maybe some Indian retail. It might be a place where during the Indian International Film Festival you have screenings of movies on giant screens. And similarly, when the cricket is on, maybe those same giant screens are used to provide, a free opportunity for people to come and watch the cricket who might not be able to get into the MCG. And I mean, it may be a place where sport is played by Indian cricket teams, more sort of the amateur side of things. But I also think it'll just be a great place for all Melburnians. It's not, for the Indian community to come and gather. It's for everyone to come and celebrate the very vibrant and diverse Indian culture here in Melbourne.
Definitely. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Before moving into the podcast, moving into the questions, I want to know, you are into the politics. You have seen law as well. What do you think? Is there many politicians, Indian politicians here?
Yeah, it's
Indian origin politicians.
It's a great question. So, we keep coming back to this idea that India is now the largest source of foreign-born population. We've overtaken England. But if you looked at any of our levels of government, you would not see that.
That's why, because what I think is, in medicine, nursing, everybody, I see the third phase is Indian.
Yeah, lots of Indians.
Teaching, Indians.
Yes.
Chefs, Indians.
Yes.
Politics, when I was searching, only your name is coming. So nobody is there.
I'm certainly not the only person of Indian origin in politics, but the numbers between the size of the Indian diaspora and the representation, there is a huge gap. Very few. So, in Melbourne's 180-year history, I'm the first person of Indian origin to hold this office. Oh, it's very kind of you. But it also makes you wonder, why has it taken that long? Indians have made a huge contribution to this city in so many ways, from, business to community service. Some of our best volunteers are from the Indian community. They give back in so many different ways, and yet they are not represented in politics to the same level as other groups in our community. And so, I don't pretend to have the answers to that, but I do think it is a sad thing if any level of government, the parliament or the council, does not represent the community that they are standing up for. I do think that you should see some sort of mirror between the people you're representing and the people who are elected to represent them. Not because only an Indian can represent the Indian community, but when we don't have that diversity in politics, you have to wonder, are we hearing all of the voices in the community, and what is holding someone back from running for politics? I do think there are things that hold people from various multicultural backgrounds, including Indians, for running. I think one of them is this, that a lot of migrants are busy enough getting on with their lives. They might have started a profession or started a business. They might have started a family. They're trying to earn enough to get ahead, to then take the time that is required to make a run for politics. That's a big sacrifice from some other part of their life. So I think that is one factor. I know that so many of our Indian community give back through volunteering. They certainly give back to the community, but I think to make the choice to run for politics is a different one. I also think that in Australia we have two major political parties that, have always, one of the two of them have always held government. And I think for a lot of migrants, they don't know how to break in to one of those two political parties. It's almost like, what is the secret sauce here
I also don't know.
to do that? So I think that there is a lot of barriers that need to be overcome, but I hope they are overcome. I hope we see more Indians at every level of government from every political party, and I do hope we see a more multicultural federal, state and local government, because you can't have a multicultural society but then their politicians don't look like them. That's a very strange situation.
Okay, so can you guide the people through me, like how can they go into the politics? If I want to enter in the politics and go on to the federal level, so how that roadmap looks like?
So I think the first thing you always have to do if you're thinking of doing something like politics is ask, why am I doing this? What is the why? Why do I want to put my hand up to be a politician? And most people will be motivated by wanting to see some sort of change. So, when I ran for council, I spoke about that context of, I worked in a city that had been hit so hard by COVID. So one of the things I wanted to change was to make sure that when I ran for council, because of the impacts of that lockdown, around a third of our city's businesses had shut. So if you walk down the street, 1 out of every 3 businesses, the doors would be closed because
Permanently closed.
Well, the tenant had given up the business and no one else had gone in because the
Okay.
city was locked down for months and months and months. People couldn't afford to keep paying rent and staff and inventory if they couldn't have certainty of customers. So that was a huge economic problem that Melbourne was facing. Of course, the borders have been closed for a long period as well, so we'd lost our tourism, which is a big part of our economy, and even moving between states wasn't allowed during a lot of COVID. So that was the change I wanted to see. I wanted to see a vibrant, flourishing, economically prosperous city. Again, that was my why. And I'm really proud that we've seen that. We've now got one of the lowest vacancy rates in shop fronts in the country. So going from 1 out of 3 shops being shut for business, it's very low now. It's only a few percent. So the businesses have come back, and we talked about some of the things we've done to help that. The tourism is back, so we've spent a lot on major events driving visitation and tourism. So they were the things that initially motivated me. And I'm not saying that's what will motivate anybody else, but there has to be a why. The why can't be I want to be a politician or I want to have X title.
Okay.
If you're in politics, that is a great privilege to represent a community, and there has to be a reason why you want to do that, a good that you are trying to achieve, maybe a change you are trying to achieve, or maybe something you are trying to stop, a bad change that you want to stop. But there has to be a why. So the first thing I'd say is work out why you're doing this.
So
if there's not a good reason, put your energy into something else.
Sure.
The next thing I'd say is you've got to have a look at the Australian political landscape and identify the party that you think best represents you.
Your ideology which matches which.
Yeah, so I'm a member of the Liberal Party, and that is a party that believes in freedom of enterprise, so being able to run a business. It believes in putting the family first, that the family is the heart of Australia. I mean, I'm a mum to 4 children. I think that families are the bedrock of our society, and I think that government should recognise that. The other thing the Liberal Party believes in is making sure that we protect the freedoms that we are so lucky to have in this country that not every country in the world has. So the Liberal Party was very much aligned with things I believed in. The other thing the Liberal Party believes in is that government should be as small as possible. We should take as little in taxes as possible, and we should let people get on with their lives. It's a bad thing if government is taking all of your money by way of taxes and trying to control your life. It's actually better for government to take as little as possible from you, let you spend your money on buying a home, raising your family, getting ahead, and let you get on with living your life fully. So the Liberal Party was the natural home for me. And I joined the Liberal Party when I was 18. People sometimes join when they're young.
You were 18?
18, yeah. So I joined at the start of my adult life. But I know members who join in their 50s and 60s. There's never a right or a wrong age to join. The thing I would say, though, is you've got to identify which party is right for you and then get involved in the party. So
your parents allow you to join the party?
My parents are not political people themselves. They've never been in politics. But in our family, we would always talk about things happening in politics when I was growing up. We'd be talking about things a government had done that were not helping people, either, increasing taxes, creating economic conditions that meant people were doing it very tough. We would always talk about that at home. So I had an awareness of the ways in which government could help people or hold people back. And my parents have always been, they've always been very encouraging of my career and my career in politics. But more than that, I wouldn't have been able to do this without them. I have 4 young kids, and being a politician is not a 9-to-5 job. It's often a 6 a.m. to midnight job, 7 days a week. You often speak at events, go to community events on the weekends. There is no way you can do that.
It's all volunteering.
Most politicians in Australia are paid different amounts of salary, but if you think about what you're expected to do, you're expected to always be available. So a soccer club might come and say, can you come and present this award tonight? And after you've done that, you might be going to an Indian community event. And after you've done that, you might be cutting the ribbon on a new business that's opening their first dinner service that night. You might be doing all of those things. You might have started the morning doing some TV interviews. You then actually have the business of government, which is making the decisions in whichever level of government you're in. once you factor all of that in, if you also want to have a family, that is incredibly difficult to achieve both of those things without broader support. You need support. If you've got a family, you need family who support what you're doing. And if you've got children, you need people who are going to be able to lean in. And I do think that is something that is very natural in an Indian community or an Indian family. You know, in Australia, it's so common to just have this nuclear family where it's parents and the kids and that is it. While in Indian families, that's just the start of the family. Yes. There'll be aunts and uncles and grandparents yes. who are part of that. And I'm very lucky that my parents have very much helped me raise my children in that way. And my kids would see it just as normal for one of my parents to be picking them up from school or to be with them at a sporting match or making a meal as they would having their mum or dad, because they've grown up that way with, and I know grandparents do this from many communities, but I do think that way of Indian family values means that not only do children feel more safe and secure, it also means that if you do want to have a career, it suddenly is a lot more possible than it is for people who don't have that support.
Okay. Were your parents are from India?
They're both from Calcutta. Oh. So we're Bengali, okay. And they met in Australia. Oh, my mother came here to visit her twin sister who worked for the Tea Board, the Indian Tea Board. She'd been posted to Sydney. And my father was here as an international student. He was studying his Masters in Architecture. Okay. And they met in Australia and married, and then they decided to start their family and their life in Australia.
Okay. When last time you visited India?
I was last there in November last year, but my parents were there just a few weeks ago with my two eldest children. So talking about sort of having that very close-knit family, my two eldest children who are 10 and 12 found it just as natural to go to India with my parents as they would have with me.
Oh, nice. A little bit I want to ask you about the advice for students who are right now studying in Australia in the Masters and Bachelors. What is your advice for students who are studying and want to go into the future far, far more away, like in the politics? You have discussed already, but I want to know about the advice, your advice for the students.
Yeah, so I'd start by saying we're very lucky, particularly here in Melbourne. We have two of the world's best universities right here in this city. Now, you think about other great cities around the world, most of them are really proud to even have one of the top 50 universities. Yeah. Melbourne has two in the central city. So if you're studying in Melbourne, you're probably already ahead of most people around the world. But I do think a real trap that particularly migrants and including people from the Indian community can fall into is thinking that education is the start and the end point to career success. I think getting into a great degree and doing well is only the first step. There's still a huge journey to go up. And I think there are a few things that you can do. I think one is having diverse interests. It's not enough to spend your life studying. I do think particularly in a country like Australia, when you're applying for jobs, if all you've got is good marks but nothing else to round you, a lot of employers think, what is this person going to be like in the workforce? Are they going to know how to be a team player? Yeah. Are they going to bring those softer skills that you need to be a good employee? So find your other interests, you know, whether that's joining a university sporting team or a community sporting team, maybe you're interested in art or culture. Make sure that you cultivate a broader personality rather than just studying. I also think, particularly in Australia, it's incredibly important to have networks. You know, it's good to have good marks. It's good to get into a good course, go to your good university. But if you don't also build relationships, I do think that is one of the toughest hurdles for migrants. You know, they go up for a job against someone who's spent their whole life here, an Australian-born person who has that network. They went to school with the people who are running the company now. They were at university with the brother of the person who's interviewing them. And for a migrant who doesn't have those connections, it's a very tough
very difficult
situation. And that is happening every day at job interviews around this country. Yes. So it is very much about building your network, and you can make friends at university, make friends through other interests, but make sure you've got that network so that you've got people who are saying to you, oh, my uncle is looking for a new junior lawyer, you know, should I get you to put your CV in? Or, you know, well, my cousin is at a hospital and they're looking for interns for this program, why don't you apply? You need the people who are pointing out opportunities to you, who are being your reference, opening those doors for you. I think that a lot of migrants feel that that is not an option available to them, to have those networks that people born here have. It absolutely is. And I think it is harder, but it can be done. And you've got to think about it in the same way you think about your university or other studies, where you think, I've got to do the assignment, I've got to get ready for the exam. Think about what is the network I'm going to create at the end of this study to set me up for success.
And definitely I want to add one thing more. people like me as well and my friends sometimes don't know about the opportunities available to us. We can go to them, but we are not aware of this.
Yes.
Like politics,
Yes.
I'm not aware of that. And one thing more, one of my friends just came to India last 3 years back, I think, with me only.
Yes.
He was in the Monash University,
Yes.
and he won the election. And now is the president of Monash University for the student league. I'm so surprised. Wow.
There you
What
go.
is
They're
this
making a difference. It is changing.
Yes,
You wouldn't have seen that, decades ago, but the change is happening. And you, of course, are part of that, telling people about opportunities, different careers.
And definitely we started this podcast for this only, to tell the people about different careers in Australia, different business opportunities, different options available to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is such important work.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And this is the first time for me doing this podcast for this level of guest.
It's been wonderful being able to have this
Thank you.
conversation.
Lastly, I want to discuss about your future goals. What you want to do next?
Yeah. So, I think there is still a huge amount of work to be done in Melbourne. We talked about some of those economic challenges that were my motivator to run. I think there are still lots of challenges in Melbourne. Two of them. One of them, I think, is the success of migrants in this city. We've seen lots of issues with social cohesion in this city, the rise of racism, and I do think every level of government has a role in stamping that out, but also providing opportunities for multiculturalism to succeed. So whether that is investing in multicultural events, creating multicultural precincts where we celebrate how multiculturalism, the cultures like what our Indian community brings to Melbourne, it makes Melbourne a better place, a culturally rich place, a more prosperous place. And it is the role of government to be telling that story so that migrants are not internally fighting for their place in this country. So I still think there is huge work to be done there. And then the other thing I would say is I do think there is a lot of work to make sure that everyone who is either, chooses to raise a family in this country has the path to get ahead. So we talked about how if you're born here, sometimes, the path might be easier for you. I think government needs to make sure that everyone who is born in Australia, so if you're a migrant and you start a family here, that your children have as much chance to succeed as the children of someone who has been here for 7 generations. And we do know that there are huge gaps at the moment. In Australia, by the time kids start school, about a quarter of them are developmentally behind. So that could be their language skills, their reading skills, their physical skills. A quarter of our kids are starting school developmentally behind, and about half of those children never catch up. So what happens to those kids at the end of school? How are they going to have full and prosperous lives? So that is my particular focus now at Council, to make sure we are investing, and particularly in those children of migrants, children from those backgrounds, that I think migrants often choose to start a life here because they want their kids to get ahead. They want their children to thrive and prosper. And it's the role of government to make sure that every kid starting school is on that level playing field so they can all thrive.
Oh, your aim to go to the state politics as well, state and federal?
No, I'm very, very happy doing what I'm doing here. I think there's a lot of work left to be done. And I don't know what my future holds, but I do know that there is a lot more that I would like to give back to the community.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank you so
Roshena.
much for having me.
I want to end this podcast, not taking too much time of her. She have a very busy schedule.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here at Town Hall and to be able to have this conversation.
Thank you very much. So let me comment down how you like the podcast, what the questions of yours are. So we'll share with her about your questions. And let's sum up this podcast. Thank you, Roshena. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for becoming one of the biggest guests in our podcast.
It is my honour, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.